Hey everyone, welcome back to the Revelation study. We are moving right along. Got a lot of things for you tonight. It's chock full with a lot of information. Let me say though, and as we begin, that we always do this study, and we want to give a shout out to those who have given us some of their notes, and that is a pastor at Calvary Church in Jupiter, Florida. We talked to them, and he said, "Hey, yeah, go ahead, use those notes, use that information." So we've used some of that. We've also used some of Pastor Jimmy Evans' notes, and also some of our own. So it's been a great study so far. I feel like we started with the 7 churches, and now we are into the time of tribulation. So it's really progressing. But the Bible tells us in Revelation that if we will read this book, that we will be blessed. So why would God not help us to understand it if He would tell us that we are going to be blessed if we read it? So we should read it. We should try to understand that. And the Holy Spirit's faithful to help us to understand that. Of course, the name of the book of Revelation is Revelation, and the root word of that is to reveal. So God would not give us a book that He would not want us to understand. However, it is full of a lot of symbolic things, but also it's a lot of literal things. And we are finding that. Also, there is an outline in the book of Revelation. It's the only book in the Bible that has its own outline. And if we follow this outline, it lays out 2,000 years of church history precisely. So it's a book that we should read and try to understand. And if we do so, we'll be blessed. So let's get started tonight on chapter 8.
Okay, so always remember, in Revelation chapter 1, the blessings in verse 3, the outlines in verse 19. And so let's not ever forget that. You can always reference that, get it in your head. Hey, this week we're in chapter 8. We're going to dive right in. It's kind of, let's just remember this. Before we start in chapter 8, let's remember that this is tribulation and we ain't going to be here.
Praise God.
So, well, you shouldn't. So the church will be taken away. The church is mentioned over 20 times in the first 3 chapters of Revelation, and then in the 4th chapter, it's not mentioned again. And that portion starts out with "come up here."
Yes.
So that is the rapture, the catching up of the church. So let's jump right in now. Chapter 6, the seals were opened. Now, seals are judgment. There's your first fill-in. Seals are judgment. Chapter 7, God seals. Now remember, God places a seal upon His protected, upon His children, the things that He owns, so to speak. And you say, well, does God own me? We've given Him permission to seal us as we're a child of the King. So in chapter 7, God seals the 144,000 to evangelize the earth. Chapter 8, which we're in today, the 7th seal opens the 7 trumpets. Now the 7th seal opens the 7 trumpets, and trumpets are warnings. Next fill-in. Trumpets are warnings. So let's jump right in, verse 1.
Okay, as you'll notice, as we progress in this, the wrath, if you will, of the Lord, it just progressively gets worse and worse and worse. And we're not trying to scare you in that, because we as the church won't be here. This is a warning again, so it progressively gets worse. So we're really going to see that in the beginning, or in chapter 8 this time. So let's start with verse 1. Chapter 8, verse 1 says, "When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was a silence in heaven for about a half an hour."
So some say that this silence is the calm before the storm. So maybe so. So if this is the calm before the storm, I want you to notice something with me. The 7th seal is what opens up 7 judgments. So as we open up the seals, remember we opened up the seals in chapter 6, and as we went through the seals, we opened those up. It was warfare, famine, death. So we could see what was happening. So the seals, as they open, the seventh one opens up a new level of judgment. So the seventh seal opens up the 7 trumpets. Now, this was what will happen. The seventh trumpet, once we get through the trumpets, the 7th trumpet will open up the 7 bowls. Now, let me explain something to you. Bowl judgments. So the 7th seal opens up the 7 trumpets. The 7th trumpet will open up the bowl judgments. And just think of this. Trumpets are warnings. These are the warnings of the judgments that are to come. And the bowl judgments literally are the wrath poured out upon the remaining people.
Right, so which it reiterates the fact that these are progressively getting worse as time goes through. So let's look at verse 2. Verse 2 says, "Then I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them." So
the 7th seal, once again, opens those 7 trumpets. So now we have a brand new judgment. You know, it's like, well, I thought we were getting finished. No, it starts all over again.
Verse 3 and 4 says, "And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel." Okay, so let's clarify some things. Some say that there's nothing probably wrong with this, but some say another angel is Jesus. Now, I would tend to believe differently, because the Greek meaning of another is another of the same kind. So another of the same kind would be another angel. Right. Incense is symbolic with prayer. It symbolizes a pleasant aroma. Now that pleasant aroma drifts toward heaven. So if you remember, if you've seen this, in Catholic settings, the priest will have that censer. That's what that is. That golden censer that is mentioned here is full of incense. And that incense is basically a sweet aroma to the Lord. It is a drifting toward heaven of the prayers. So notice with me, the prayers of God's people are what leads the trumpet judgments. We're going to look at that. Prayers are more powerful. Remember this. Prayer is more powerful than anything that the darkness can throw at us. So notice something, that the censer was gold and the altar was golden. Gold represents the purity of the prayers and the altar. So this is just the pure and raw rawness and the pureness of the prayers that were going up. So let's read verse 5, and we'll look back just a little bit. I wanted to say that I had always wondered about that censer and what that meant. I really didn't know that. I had seen that on the television and different things. So that's very interesting. So verse 5 says, "Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth, and there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake." So
you notice it says an earthquake, because we're going to get worldwide earthquakes in a little while.
Right.
So an earthquake. So this is believed to be the prayers of the saints that were lifted to heaven and then cast back down upon the earth. Now, you may ask the question, the prayers of God's people are what leads the trumpet judgments. I don't get it. Let's explain that. Nowhere does it indicate that their prayers were for protection or salvation or prosperity or for peace. It just says that it is the prayers. The prayers was a sweet aroma that was going up. These are prayers of the will and the judgment of God for the appointed time. So
I actually asked that question, and because I couldn't understand what that exactly meant, but they're praying in the will of the Father, in the will of the Lord, as He does the wrath that He has to do.
And this is set in motion. Right. So in other words, you can't stop a pregnancy once the birth pains start. Right. This can't be stopped. It is not something that God is going to relent His hand from. It is going to. So they're praying for they're praying for people to hear the word and to know it, because the 144 are out there. They're praying for God's will and God's judgment to be divine in His own judgment, because the righteousness that He requires is the righteousness that His righteousness requires Him to require. So anyway, now that you've got that, you can ask me about it later and I'll tell you. So let's go to verse 6.
Verse 6 says, "Now the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them."
So remember, trumpets are warnings. The 7 angels are about to bring warnings or trumpet judgments.
Right.
So they're getting ready to blow those. Now remember, if you want to get someone's attention, you scream, you shout, you make a loud noise. Tina and I, when we're in Florida and they lift the drawbridges, they warn everybody first. They turn the blinking lights on and they blast this horn. When we're here in the South, where we live now, when there are tornado warnings, we will hear that tornado siren blasting even over the wind. So trumpets are blasts of warnings. So trumpet judgments. So we're going to read through verses 7 through 11. Going to kind of stop and meander a little bit through it. Then we're going to recap it just a little bit because it's pretty good.
All right, so these trumpet judgments are getting ready to start, and here's the first angel. Verse 7 says, "The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth. And 1/3 of the earth was burned up, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up."
Okay, so 1/3 of all the vegetation is destroyed. Just wiped off the face of the earth. So we've got 1/3 of that vegetation, trees, plants. Now notice what it says, green grass. Green grass here means to be wheat and hay. Now, they didn't have lawns in the day that when John was dictating this, like we have lawns. They didn't mow their yards. They didn't have pretty green grass surrounding their homes. It wasn't manicured. When we say the green grass, we think, oh my, it'll all be dead. This means wheat and hay. All. You notice what it says. It says 1/3 of the vegetation, but it says all. It says all of the green grass. So all of the world's sustenance will be destroyed.
Wow.
There's not going to be anything to eat.
Right.
So, like we said, this is not getting better. So, let's look at verse 8. Look at the second angel.
"The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain, burning with fire, was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became as blood."
Now, you'll notice something that's going to recur here is 1/3. Now, we have 3 series of 7 judgments. And in this judgment of trumpets, we keep seeing that 1/3 is being affected. 1/3 is being affected. So I want you to notice the word something, parentheses, like, or quotation marks like. Something like a great burning mountain was thrust upon the earth. We're going to come back to this, but I'm just going to explain to you. If you were trying to explain something that you had never even contemplated or could imagine, John is trying. That's why John says, "I saw something like." Often we see him say, "It was like this. It was like that." It's because that's the only thing that he can't say with definity that this is what it is. He says it's like this. So we're going to come back to what was like a burning mountain that was thrust upon the earth. Verse 9.
Okay. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed.
So 1/3 of the sea. So that means that 1/3 of the salt water will be destroyed. 1/3 of the ships will be destroyed by the tidal waves that are affected by that, the concussion, whatever's happening. There are currently about 93,000 registered ships worldwide. Let's just think about 31,000 of these things will be wiped off the face of the earth, will be destroyed in a moment of time, in one event. So, verse 10.
Verse 10 says, "The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water.
So you notice, he saw something blazing like a torch, and it was a great star that fell from heaven, that appeared to be a great star that fell from heaven, and it was blazing like a torch. And it fell on a third of the rivers and a third of the spring waters. Now remember, we just read in verse 7 that all of the earth's sustenance will be wiped away. Now we've got a third of fresh water will be destroyed. That's a third of the capacity of potable or drinkable water. In parentheses, that's drinkable. So potable means that it's drinkable. So a third of the fresh water supply will be gone. Drinkable water will be very difficult to locate. So we take that so seriously for granted. We'll just grab another bottle of water. We'll turn that faucet on. We will pick up another case of water from the store. It's not a problem for us, but those things will not be available.
Right.
So we're going to move on. Verse 11.
Verse 11 says, "The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter."
Okay, so wormwood literally means bitter. That's what the word means. So you can see the last he said was made bitter instead of being made wormwood. So wormwood means bitter. The water that is infected will be so bitter it will be poisonous to people.
Right.
So not only will those people be starving for water, starving for food, but they will also be so starved for water that they will literally drink the poisonous water and die.
Well, don't some people believe that this could be possibly nuclear fallout or nuclear war?
Okay, so some believe this to be nuclear. Now, I have mixed emotions about this. We're going to look at this in a minute. I have mixed emotions about this, kind of like the star that the wise men followed when they were led to Jesus. Some say that was a star and it recycled itself back around, and we could see it back in last December. I have a little different opinion. I think a supernatural God can put a supernatural light in a natural sky and leads natural men to a supernatural occurrence. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. But
this could make sense.
But we already know that we're going to have wars and famines and death, and people are going to be killing one another. So some believe this to be nuclear. We're going to look at it. The word wormwood in Russian is very close, or some say it's exact to the word Chernobyl. Remember that word? Chernobyl. Chernobyl, April 1986, was a nuclear reactor in Russia, Chernobyl, Russia, basically melted down. To this day, no one can inhabit that. You can't go into that area without protective suit on. The radiation is so intense. The animals that have migrated back to there are all kind of mutated, have growths all over them. It's just abandoned. So wormwood literally means Chernobyl, and Chernobyl literally means wormwood. So verse 7, though, watch this. It talks about hell and fire. Now, during nuclear testing, it has produced hell. That plume of fire explosion produced hell from that,
right,
from the fire.
So it makes more sense, really.
It's
very likely nuclear.
So let's notice something about the seals. The seals were what man did to man, right there on your fill-ins. The seal was what was released. Remember this, that they're talking about the Antichrist. That was what man can do to man. The trumpets are warnings. Trumpets are used to get someone's attention, and they are what God can do to mankind.
Which is when God pours His wrath out, it's terrible.
And remember, God's wrath is not reserved for His people.
Right, absolutely. Remember,
He will remove His people from the wrath, and the wrath of the Lamb in chapter 6. It's the only time we hear that, and the Lamb is always Jesus, and wrath is not reserved for His people.
Well, and that's why He gave us this book of Revelation, so that we can see this beforehand and we can be warned.
That's why He says you're blessed if you read it.
Exactly.
So, notice again in verse 10, a great star fell from heaven. The Greek translation for star is aster, A-S-T-E-R, aster. It's where we get the word asteroid. It's where we get the word asteroid. So notice again, I want you to notice again, as we go back to verse 8, we said we'd go back to there. We're going to circle back to it. John said there was something like a great mountain burning with fire. Now, let's just kind of break this down. It's here on your notes. An asteroid has been discovered several years ago in 2004. It appears that its trajectory is on course for planet Earth. Now, NASA's not going to tell us this stuff because they don't want a mass hysteria. And I kind of tend to agree. Sometimes we're more blessed by what we don't know. So there. I mean, this is a fact, proven fact by NASA scientists, physicists, everybody. Okay, so it appears that it's on trajectory for planet Earth. It's been named Apophis, A-P-O-P-H-I-S, Apophis. Apophis is an Egyptian god. They named it after an Egyptian god, which is basically one of their deities, which was against God, and it meant the serpent. Now, they just named this the serpent. Now, let's just think about this. This thing is over 1,200 feet in diameter, and it's traveling at 28,000 miles per hour, and it's headed toward Earth. Now, you say, well, 1,200 feet, that's basically a little less than a quarter of the size of the distance of a mile. So it's a little less than a quarter of a mile. So let's just think. A .22 bullet is smaller than my little finger, and you fire it at something or someone at 100, 200 feet, and it's going to hit them, either go through them or knock them down.
Right.
Because it's traveling at only a little over 1,000 miles per hour. We're talking about something 1,200 feet across, traveling at 28,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
Now, some say it will come so close. They say this is only going to come close to Earth. It's going to come within, I can't remember, I think it's 19,000 feet. I can't remember for sure, I'm sorry. I didn't write it down. But it's going to come, they say it's going to come closer than our satellites will orbit. It's going to come way closer than the moon. It's going to come so close to us that it will put our satellites at risk and cause them to fall and to crash to Earth. Some say that's nonsense. Mathematicians, scientists, physicists that are outside of NASA says they're not telling you the truth. It's going to hit the Earth. It is definitely going to hit the Earth. And they say, everybody agrees on this, that it will hit our planet on April 13th, 2029, which is Friday the 13th, which, by the way, it is spoken that Jesus entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, so to speak, on Friday the 13th.
So if this actually is true, then it stands to reason. I mean, all of this stands to reason. Is this just by chance?
Well, that will be, and that will be during Passover then also. Now it's 2029. Here's the thing: it will be visible with a child's telescope by 2025.
Wow.
I'm talking about something about Walmart. It will be visible with the naked eye by 2027. It is said that you can walk outside after 2027 and see it in the sky during the day. Now, with the exception of clouds, probably. There is an argument as to whether it will impact or be a close flyby, but everyone agrees on the exact date, April 29th, Good Friday the 13th. So let's read something here and let's see if this doesn't make a little sense.
Okay, Luke 21:25 through 26, and it's on your handout there. It says, "And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. People fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming onto the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken."
Okay, stars, asters, will be signs of distress or, quotation, tribulation. whatever this is, whatever has been described in chapter 21 of Luke, whatever it is, will be so horrifying enough to people, it will cause them to faint with fear worldwide.
So, if you can see this with the naked eye, then that might be what they're talking about.
When you walk out of your front door every single day,
Right.
you're going to look at it. Because by then, it's going to be, this is coming. And you're going to be, it will cause people to faint with fear. So, do you feel better now?
I'm going to heaven.
Okay.
I'm going
So
to the rapture.
this will be great, we're not saying we're not saying this is definite, and we're not saying that all that. But you Google it, Opophis, Apophis. Google it, and you'll be able to read all about it. It will be, if it does happen this way, it will be during the tribulation, and we're not putting timestamps on anything.
Oh, no, we can't.
So we don't know.
Not
Could be
the Lord knows that.
So we don't know anything. So all we know is we do know that portion.
Yes.
It may not mean anything, but in other words, I'd be aware.
Yeah.
I'd be vigilant. So verse 12.
Well, these things are coming into clearer view now, clearer understanding. As you get closer to something, you can see it better. And we're getting closer and closer and closer to the rapture of the church. And you can start seeing this like shadow of all this. You can start seeing this. And it makes sense. It makes sense. We're not saying...
So all of that tribulation is so close to where we are right now that it's casting its shadow upon us. Like I said before, stand by a tree in the afternoon sun, and that shadow, it may be on somebody else's property, but the shadow will cast on you.
Right.
So, verse 12.
Okay, verse 12. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night.
So remember, we keep hearing the word, the term a third. A third would be. So the fourth trumpet will be a reduction in light. Now, 1/3 of the stars won't be destroyed. More than likely, that's not going to happen. What this probably means, kind of researching it down, is that a third of the sun, maybe over the face of the earth, a third of the earth will be blocked out and be darkened. In other words, we already know that there will be wars. We already know that there's going to be people killing people. We already know that something is hitting the earth, whether it be war, nuclear warheads or warfare or
So
asteroids.
Could be fallout from that.
So just think about Mount St. Helens and Google that, and you see what I'm talking about. We remember it very well because my aunt and uncle and cousins lived near there, and we watched it on TV. But it blackened out the entire. There was no sunlight, blackened it out. So 1/3 of the stars will not be destroyed. A third of the sun and moon will be darkened out. This resembles, just saying this is what it resembles, nuclear fallout or a direct hit by an asteroid.
Right.
It resembles that. We like right now, Chernobyl, you can't go there. Now you may have sunshine there, but you can't visit there.
Right.
So they won't even allow you in. You can't go there. So
Verse 13 says, Then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead, Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the 3 angels are about to blow. So there's 3 more that's coming.
Yeah, so we're finishing up chapter 8. We got 3 more trumpets. And the angel or the eagle is saying, Woe, 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 woe. In other words, the 3 that are coming are going to be worse than the 4 that we've just seen. 3 more. The ancient Greek word for angel and eagle are very close in spelling. So some ancient versions say that it is an eagle flying through the midst of heaven. Some say angel, making this cry. But 3 more trumpet judgments will be worse than the first 4. In other words, it's going to get worse. So the angel's woes are well-founded because 1/3, that's your last fill-in, 1/3 of the earth's population will die in these next 3 trumpets.
Wow.
So there's some things to remember. Just keep this in mind.
Yes, I know this is heavy. We know this is heavy, and it really is. I mean, for those who are going to be left behind, it is terrible. It's horrible. But the reason we're teaching this right now is because we do not have to be here when this happens. We want to warn. We want to make sure that we all know that we can come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ today. If you don't know Him as Lord and Savior, come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, and you don't have to worry about this. We want to shout our trumpet saying, hey, listen, before the church is taken up, you can be a part of the church. Let's not worry about this stuff. Yes, we can use this as a tool to witness to others, but we don't have to be here. If you're not where you need to be with the Lord, even if you think, I'm not sure, let's make sure. Let's make sure tonight. Today is the day of salvation. Let's not turn away from the Lord.
Okay, so remember, the church will be lifted away.
Yes.
At the beginning of chapter 4. So here's the thing. Remember this very last portion. Let's strive to be Revelation 4 people,
yes,
and not Revelation 8 people. Because Revelation 8 people, this is awful. This is terrible. We can't even imagine how bad this is going to be.
Exactly.
So like Tina says, get your hearts ready. No question is a bad question unless it's a bad question. So break out, have some conversation time, see what you think, talk with one another. Like I said, let me just end this by saying, Tina and I are not Revelation scholars.
No.
We are not Revelation in-depth teachers. We are bringing this to our crew, and if you're watching this and viewing this from somewhere else, thank you for jumping in with us. But we have a lot of I don't knows.
But we know we're supposed to be ready.
We know there's a lot of things we do know.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that we all understand that this is talking about the future. This is talking about the church. The church is gone. It's talking about tribulation upon the earth. So we're going to see all that. We're going to wind it down here, but we want you to make some conversation. So we are Christpoint Church. We're real people living real lives, serving a real God.
Welcome home.